Hello, everybody, and welcome to the DATAcated show. My name is Kate Stashny. I'm the host of the DATAcated show, and I am extremely excited to see you, everybody, again. We took the summer off from hosting the live show, and we are back with an awesome guest, Leon Gordon. He's a partner at Pomerol Partners, and he's going to talk to us today about end-to-end enterprise Microsoft data and analytics solutions. Truly can't wait to get into that topic. And as you're joining us, I want to remind you that this is a fun live show. You get to ask us questions. We take as many questions and comments from the live audience as we possibly can. And in DATAcated show fashion, we obviously have a fun giveaway. So the rules to play, I'll put this up on the screen here for you, is to type in hashtag Pomerol on any of the platforms you're joining us on. It could be LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Type in hashtag Pomerol. And if you're wondering what it is you're going to win, we're giving away two of these little cups. It's a cool cup. It says DATAcated on it. You could show how dedicated you are to data. So hashtag Pomerol to play. I see we already have several folks in the audience. Thanks, Fabio, Andrew, Joel. We've got, Colette's here. Hello, Colette. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I'm looking forward to this awesome session, and I'm going to go ahead and bring Leon Gordon up on our stage here. Hello, Leon.
Hi, Kate. Pleasure to see you.
Welcome to the DATAcated show.
It's absolutely amazing to be here. You'll have to excuse me. I was just busy typing in hashtag Pomerol for my chance to win some swag as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to get you one of these mugs because you just told me you needed one, right? So
I do, definitely.
Awesome. I love it. I see everyone's joining us and typing hashtag Pomerol. As you're joining us, just another quick reminder, feel free to ask questions if you have specific questions about Pomerol or Microsoft data analytics solutions. Leon's the go-to guy for this. We're definitely going to try to engage with you all as much as we can. Before we get into that topic, Leon, I think it would be great to just hear from you, tell the audience who you are, how did you end up at Pomerol Partners, and what do you do there?
Yeah, no problem at all. As you mentioned, so I'm Leon Gordon, currently based out in the UK, a partner at Pomerol Partners. I'm currently also on the Forbes Tech Council, a thought leader at Brainz Magazine, and a Microsoft MVP. As Kate mentioned, I've been with Pomerol really this year, so for the last 4 months or so, really focusing on building out Microsoft end-to-end data analytics solutions for some of our enterprise clients there. It's really good for me because joining Pomerol, for those of you that are not aware of the backstory for Pomerol, they actually spun out of Deutsche Bank approximately 10 years ago, very much based on financial data analytics solutions from a click perspective. Now, with Pomerol being predominantly a click house, me entering from a Microsoft background has really started to broaden our take on analytics and how we can be a bit more tool agnostic across the organization there. It's probably worthwhile mentioning that Pomerol is a global organization, so we do have offices in London, Canary Wharf. We also have offices in Lisbon in Portugal, and Kansas City and Chicago.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that background. So you mentioned it was a spinoff from Deutsche Bank. Do you have a bit more information on that?
Yeah, definitely. So our founding partner, a gentleman called Fred Hefner, he was actually working at Deutsche Bank and living in the UK, I believe, at the time as well. So that's probably one thing that is worth noting here at Pomerol is we do have a lot of different nationalities going on. I think we have a couple of Aussies, some New Zealanders, some from the UK and some from the USA as well. Now, as I mentioned, at the time he was working at Deutsche Bank, decided to open up his own operation, moved stateside, so relocated to build this organization. And from there, it's continued to grow from strength to strength.
Awesome. I love those stories when people are working at a company, they come up with a solution, and then they create their own company based on that solution. So I absolutely love the story. Now, we're here today to talk about end-to-end Microsoft data analytics solutions. So I think a good place for us to start is to define what are some of those commonly known solutions that we're going to cover today.
Oh, definitely. So, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners are aware, and some may not be aware as well. So, Microsoft, from a data analytics and business intelligence perspective, has been around for a long time now. Starting off probably with some Excel-based solutions. I'm sure everybody's still busy doing some data analysis as we speak in Excel, before moving on to the likes of SQL Server on-prem. SaaS cubes, so this is analysis services, SSIS, so integration services, and then landing where we are today in terms of cloud-based solutions like the likes of Azure Synapse, obviously Power BI, Azure Data Factory, and I'm sure we'll get to spend some more time talking about the cloud perspective as we go through today.
Awesome. Thanks for listing those out. I think it'll be interesting to hear from the audience, which of the tools are you using or maybe just familiar with? I'm assuming most people will be at least familiar with Excel, but let us know, are you using Azure? You said SQL, SAS, Cube, Excel. Let us know in the comments. It'll just be great to see what sort of coverage we have here in the audience. Now, you mentioned all these great solutions, and I'm assuming all companies in the world are using them. Is that right?
You would think so. You would think so. So I would go on record and say more than likely every organization in the world is using some form of Microsoft Excel. Whether this is a good or a bad thing depends on who you speak to. But I can categorically say that using Excel as a database is definitely a bad thing, as the UK government will also testify to. As I'm not too sure if you're aware, Kate, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, which we've all been privy to over the last few years, the UK government actually lost, I believe it was over 100,000 rows of data by trying to store it into an Excel spreadsheet.
I did hear about this. Yes.
Indeed. Our friends over at Forbes, I love this fact as well. They had a study which looked at spreadsheets, and actually 9 out of 10, so 90% of spreadsheets in existence have an error within them. So whilst I go on record to say that a lot of organizations probably are using Excel as a technology, are they using it for what it should be used for? I would say no. And are there better solutions available? So one of the solutions we put together at Pomerol, specifically not just from a Microsoft background, we can do this on a whole suite of databases, is organizing that data storage. Okay, so taking what can be quite tedious, quite ominous tasks that people are putting together in Excel, whether this is VBA macros, underlying formulas, etc. And generally we find that there's a silo of knowledge within organizations, so just one person who holds the keys to how the report runs every month. Obviously, what we find there is it's not an efficient process. It's also a risk to the organization, and we put together a process that automates these types of processes into solutions that can be operated at a click of a button, are safe, are secure, and obviously de-risks a silo of information within the organization, and obviously removes the errors as well. So we tend to put these solutions into more cloud-based solutions in general times, but we've also been able to work with some companies in terms of on-prem solutions in the SQL Server environment as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important to address that single person knowledge risk, right? That once that person's out the door, so is the entire solution. That's a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of money down the drain. So I'm glad that you're addressing that. I was just peeking into the comments, and we've got people using all sorts of tools. We've got Excel, Power BI, SQL, Access. We've got Azure. Let's see. The comments go on and on. There's a lot of tools being used by everyone, and I think a lot of the common ones that you listed are being listed here as well. You mentioned earlier that majority of companies are using Excel, and they might not be using it for the purpose that it was made for. So what would you say Excel is good for? What should it be used for?
Oh, definitely. It's a great question. So I think that Excel is really fantastic for self-service, quick, analytics and trying to get some insight from the data. Does this mean it should be used for production solutions? Not in my opinion. But can from a self-service perspective, it enhance organizations and enable users within the organization to consume data in an environment that they're more familiar with? Definitely. Now, outside of that, I think that Excel comes into its own right and its own strengths when put in the hands of the correct users. But overall, the organization has to have a data culture in place, have a data solution in place that enables the organization to be able to have governed data available to these type of what I would call either analysts and sometimes super users. So Excel really comes into play on top of what would be a robust enterprise data solution, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still use Excel. I feel like it has a purpose for me. I use between Excel and Google Sheets, I use it to just sometimes organize my thoughts.
Yep.
I realize not everybody thinks in tables, but I think I tend to do that, or just keep progress on just very, very quick things for myself. But I think you're right. Every tool has a purpose, and it's so important for companies to understand the value that they can gain from using the right tools for the right purpose. So why do you think companies are not using some of these other tools and they're sticking with maybe the more basic tools that they have access to?
Yeah, so I think it's down to a couple of points. The first one I'm probably going to mention is change. We've seen a lot of change within the world in the last few years, and some companies are against change. I always go back to the person that's the single font of knowledge within an organization, and you always find that there's a resistance to making processes a bit more efficient, or the fact that they feel like they might be losing their job to automation. So with that being said, what we need to look at in these type of solutions is how can organizations, and we do this at Pomerol in every solution we put in place, is look at how organizations can get a return on investment from data. Okay, this could be human time saving, whereby that person that is a font of knowledge can start to build out new tools, new technologies, be able to do data analysis much quicker in the future by not having to have these ominous tasks. Also, what we tend to find in some industries that are a little bit behind the curve, shall we say, because not everybody is working on cutting edge AI or machine learning. It's about, and again, this is one of what I feel are our key strengths at Pomerol, is about making a solution that really feeds into the organization. This could be a small proof of concept that allows them to be able to see the power of their data, or it could be more of a larger piece. Something I can probably state on this is we worked with a shipping organization that were doing a lot of manual writing down of when containers came into via the port, logging the hours of how long it took to unload the container, and this was all very manual, either held in Excel spreadsheets or written down and then put into a system further down the line. And obviously the reports based on this were then built either in Excel or SSRS, so SQL Server Reporting Services at the time. What we were able to do is utilize the Microsoft Power Platform and build what's known as a Power App. Now, this enabled the Power App to log the shipments as they came into the port, log each individual's amount of time spent on that shipment directly on mobile devices, so either mobile phones or tablets, and capture that directly into an Azure SQL database. We were then able to transform this data in Azure Synapse and present this data back to the organization within a very more visual, effective way within Power BI, which again, these reports, the leadership team had available to them on their mobile devices and tablets. And Kate, I don't need to tell you this based on your data visualization history, but looking at tabular data is very difficult for the mind to digest. So seeing this in a visually appealing way at a glance and giving them that insight in real time was an amazing feat.
Were they super like blown away that they could just pick up their phone and see everything?
Definitely, it's like the person that first invented sliced bread, I guess. That type of transformation. Because if you imagine you've worked in this way for so long,
Yeah.
you're just used to it. You don't you're too deep in the weeds, as I like to call it,
Yeah.
to see the business and the process efficiencies that can be had. And that's really where we see the beauty of our solutions is going in from a holistic view and being able to define and understand processes and then look for these key points of efficiencies where we can really have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like this comment that came in from David Taylor. He says that, some organizations are not mature enough in non-Excel tools and have tight deadlines, which revert them back to what they know, Excel. Um, and I think they need someone like Pomerol to come in and show them the art of the possible, tell them that it's not something that's so out of this world that they can do this. Like Power BI is pretty simple, but if you've never used it, you're like, oh no, what is this? Give me my
Yep.
Excel back, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this looks
And
different.
no, it really is, and that's one thing that Microsoft did fantastically well with Power BI, is they gave it a really low barrier to entry, and then obviously the more time you spend with it, the more complex the tool becomes. Just to put a comment on David Taylor's comment, for lack of a better term, there.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you mentioned deadlines and lack of time and reverting. I'll go back to the statistic that I mentioned before. 9 out of 10 spreadsheets have an error in them. So if that error is present in all of your data, then I'm not too sure what deadline you can have. If your reporting is incorrect from the foundation upwards,
Yeah.
I would rather miss the deadline and have accurate reports and forecasting than meet that deadline personally.
Yeah, the thing with data quality is you strive for perfection. You likely will never reach it, right? But you get it as good as you can because people have those deadlines. So it's just such a tough balance. You can't just say, I need another 2 months. Like we need the data today. So I think sometimes you do have to like revert back to what you know just to quickly get the solution out there. But I definitely agree. Taking the time to A, clean up your data and B, learn the more efficient solution that can help you deliver the insights, the results to the key stakeholders in a timely fashion is what everybody should be striving for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this is why we have to look at data analytics,
Yeah.
like I say, as a broader approach. So I think we're going to talk about this throughout the show as well, I'm sure, in a bit more depth. As you mentioned, data quality, security,
Yeah.
governance, the transformation and business logic behind data. And we tend to find in our experience, this is where proof of concepts pay dividends. So the business can continue to operate if it is Excel-based reporting or what business as usual is. But then you have a transformational piece whereby you're taking maybe a less critical report or sometimes even the most critical reports and pushing these forward in the new world to be able to get that to stakeholders and get the organization something tangible that they can then showcase around to say, well, this is what we could be doing and this is where the ROI is.
Right, right. And I think it's important to discuss this. So you mentioned that shipping example. So, and I wanted to ask, did you face any obstacles, challenges in trying to change the way that they're used to doing things and, showing this new path to success?
Oh yes, definitely. So one of those obstacles and challenges was deadlines. So obviously, as you mentioned before, everybody has a deadline or date that we're working towards. And with newer technologies and introducing new technologies to new organizations, there's obviously learning curves to be took into play, teething problems that need to be worked through. And obviously, when you're using mobile devices towards the dock as well, we had to take into account things like signal and how we could ensure that the data was actually being entered and logged correctly into the underlying database. Now, with that being said, from a people perspective, I don't think I've worked on any project whereby there hasn't been resistance to newer technologies. And the way that I like to look at it, as I mentioned before, is understanding that this enables people to go and do more in the future and put their skills into play. It enables organizations to be more efficient. And even when people first started to learn the likes of Excel, maybe SQL and other technologies and Access, I think someone mentioned before, there was a learning curve involved then. At that point, it was a new technology. So people are well versed in taking on newer technologies. It's just about changing that culture and mindset.
Yeah, I think a good question to ask people who are, very against change is ask them why they don't use a handheld calculator and or a paper and pencil anymore, right? Why are they using Excel? Like, did they feel like their job is going away when that happened? No. So you're right. Educating them on the fact that it's going to make their jobs easier, make them more valuable, and tell them that these skills are transferable to future careers and it's an investment in themselves, not they're not
Oh,
wasting
definitely.
anything by learning this
Yeah,
skill.
I totally agree, and I want to point out that Excel is not the bad guy in this conversation, not in the slightest. But the key point here is to understand that every tool has its place, and when delivered correctly, an end-to-end data analytics solution really makes every tool shine because it's then used for what it's needed to be used for.
Yes, absolutely. All right, before we go to the next topic, I'm going to share my screen quickly and remind folks that in the next, after the next question, we're going to announce our very first winner. This is what we're giving away, a DATAcated cup. We've got some entries in there so far, so we're gonna draw the raffle. It's going to be randomly selected. So go ahead and type in hashtag Pomerol if you haven't done so yet. I'll take a comment here from Brian. He says, well, once upon a time, Excel was the cutting edge tech innovation. And that's so true. And I think people were probably like, no, don't do it. I don't want Excel. Excel's taking my job. It's going to automate things.
Exactly. I mean, to be honest, we're here again, aren't we?
Yeah.
With the same conversation in terms of AI as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversations that go around at the moment in terms of AI taking over jobs and automation. And like you mentioned, Kate, I'm sure it was the same when Excel was first built all those years ago.
Yes, exactly. Okay, the next topic I wanted to cover was a slightly deep dive onto one of the tools that you mentioned, Power BI. So I wanted to talk about self-service, business intelligence, data analytics. How do you at Pomerol actually help clients develop these solutions, scale these solutions, and maybe talk us through an example of when this was successful for a client?
Oh, definitely. So here at Pomerol, what we like to do is partner with organisations, as I mentioned, to really understand a business. We don't come in and just sell you a tool or a solution. We really want to understand the business processes, what the requirements are, what keeps people up at night with their data, and then how we can help you solve those problems with data. We're here today to speak about Microsoft end-to-end analytics, and we will, but it's definitely worth noting that at Pomerol we have a whole host of tech partners, including Click, Microsoft, Matillion, and more, Data Robot as well. So we do really choose the right tool for the right solution. Now, with that being said, Kate, I'd like to discuss a project that I'm very happy with. Now, I can't name client names, unfortunately, but we've been in a position where we've been able to do and I'll talk about some tools in regards to this as well as we go through. But I believe that we've imported 46 billion rows of data, so what I would call massive data, into a Power BI solution. Now, doing this, we use Snowflake as our data source. We then ingested the data into the data lakehouse architecture, which again I'll go on to discuss hopefully in a bit more detail as we go through. So storing the data in data lake Gen 2 storage within Azure Synapse, moving this into a SQL Server pool within Synapse, and then serving this data through to Power BI using hybrid storage mode, and then delivering this 46 billion rows of data to the end users for reporting, analysis, and then being able to connect to with the likes of Excel and other tools to be able to use in a familiar territory. Now, the reason I mention this is from a self-service perspective, and we do get asked quite often questions around how to do self-service in the correct way. And the way that we like to put it across is that you have different categories of users. Okay, you're going to have some users who just want to get a number in Excel. You're going to have some users who are analysts and who can play and manipulate the data in Excel. Other super users who are going to combine data sets, tables, etc. Data scientists, and the list goes on and on. Now, with this being the case, we like to understand the use cases across the organization. And obviously we have what we call a certified or a governed data set, whereby we're giving out to the organization data that we have agreed that the data quality is correct. The data is secure for each of these different roles, so they have access to the data they should have, and also they're able to manipulate existing metrics. Now, what we tend to find when organizations do self-serve is that marketing will have one version of a commission calculation, and then finance will have a different version of a commission calculation, and so on and so forth, and the numbers will never match because the calculations are different to begin with. By verifying and certifying this data set and the metrics within it before we give it out to the wider organization, they're still able to go and do their manipulation and perform extra calculations and forecasting, but they're doing it on data that the business has already defined as fit for purpose. And this is how we would start any self-service project, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, the word self-service seems so easy, and it seems like it's the simplest thing, right? I automatically think Power BI, but you listed so many different steps that have to take before it actually gets into Power BI and becomes a pretty data visualization. So two questions. One came from David. He's asking, you know, do you carry out data quality at each level of the process? And my sort of follow-up question to that is, how long on average does each of these phases take? Look, we can use the example of the 46 billion rows of data.
Yep, no problem at all. So do we carry out data quality on every aspect of the process? I'm going to say yes and no. So this very much, again, echoing back to one of the comments earlier, I believe it might have been from David as well. It depends on time, need throughout the business. Ideally, we check data quality at source, we check data quality at ingestion, and then we check data quality after any transformations. Now, once we have a certified data set, as so to speak, it then goes out to the wider organization. So when we're doing self-service analytics, it becomes very difficult to perform DQ on what an individual in each different department is doing. Can it be done? Yes. Does every organization have an appetite for that? The answer to that would be no. So we perform it where it's needed, and where we're able to do so. Also, as part of the DQ, this entails things like making sure numbers are accurate in terms of the data being ingested, keeping robust logs of what those ingestions look like from a time perspective, any performance enhancements we can add as part of these solutions as well. So it's not just down to the data and the quality of that we're assessing, it's also down to the solutions and the pipelines in place as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. I think that was awesome. We are finally at a place to do our first giveaway. Are you excited? I'm excited.
Good luck, everyone. I hope
so
I win.
Good luck. We're going to announce our first winner now, but make sure you keep playing because we're going to announce a second winner towards the end of the session. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click draw. This is my favorite part as we've run through everyone who has entered. Oh, I hope I don't win because I actually entered it to tell people what to do. Oh, Yasmin. All right, congratulations. I'm going to follow up with you and get your address and make sure I ship you one of these mugs. Awesome. Thank you for playing. We're going to keep this party moving. Yes. So that was fun. We're going to announce one more winner at the end. So make sure you keep those hashtag Pomerols coming. We've got a question here from Arihant. He's asking, how efficient will the aggregation operation on these billion rows of data in Power BI, or were they done in the back end and loaded and then calculated, aggregated metrics? So what was the process there?
Arihan, absolutely fantastic question. The good news is that we're going to have a anonymized version of this data set available for people to play with in the not too far away future. To answer that question directly without becoming too technical, we do use an aggregated fact table, and we also have the raw detail table at the lowest grain available as well, and we combine these two methods to serve the data back to the organization. Awesome, thank you for that. I think it's time to move on to another tool. So I really wanted to do another deep dive on Azure, and you mentioned data security before, so my question to you here was, does Azure actually help address some of those fears that people and organizations have around data security? Yes, definitely. So, and again, this is probably one of our biggest queries that we get from people that are moving from what we call on-prem to cloud-based technologies. Now, with that being said, we have specialists within our team who can go into much more detail in terms of cloud solution than myself, as it's not my area of forte. But Azure brings to the fore a lot of security technologies. We have encryption with data at rest, encryption of data in flight. We also have role-based authentication as well. So what I mentioned before in terms of enabling people to have the permissions that they need to fulfill their role, as opposed to having what was previously known as God mode across an organization. We also have the likes of multi-factor authentication available to us from an Azure perspective. And then looking across Synapse and Power BI, respectively, the way that we tend to look at permissions and security, as I mentioned before, is giving people the lowest level of privileges they need to perform their role. And then you can always bring values up from there. We do have, I won't go into too much detail on this today and give away too many of our trade secrets. But in terms of the way that we handle our roles and best practice within that space, we do have clearly defined solutions that we put in place to handle security within our Azure-based solutions as well.
Okay, awesome. We had a question, and I know you touched on this a bit already, but Brian wanted to, I guess, learn a bit more about how you treat data quality and data governance.
Again, very much. It's a great question. It's a very wide question as well. So I'll do my best to answer it succinctly. We tend to fall back onto Purview across so Azure Purview across our real estate, and then when we get down to a tool by tool perspective, as I mentioned, Power BI certified data sets are fantastic from that perspective. In data quality, generally handled throughout the pipeline processes. We try to do as much as close to ingestion as possible, but obviously preserving the raw data at the point of ingestion and having checks in place. Now, sorry, Kate, I'll go on to plug. So within my newsletter very recently, we looked at the topic of should I check my data quality every day? The answer to that overwhelmingly is yes. So it's about being consistent with this process and redefining as time goes on, okay? Because data evolves over time. So maybe some of the rules and validations you set in place 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ago are no longer valid. So you'd have to ensure that you keep on top of these processes as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Should you check it every day? I assume you just never stop checking it, right? You just
Yes.
you need someone standing there.
Yeah, I know. I keep reverting back to the Forbes stat and 9 out of 10 spreadsheets, but it really is key, right? It's the same as building a house. If you build on sand, it's going to sink.
Yeah.
You have to make sure your foundation is accurate first before you can build any type of robust data solutions.
What if you're building a sand castle, Leon?
Well, then you're in a much better place than me, because it generally means you're on holiday and somewhere hopefully hot as well.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. Question here from Carl. He's asking, do you use Azure Synapse dedicated pools as a data warehouse or Azure SQL database managed instance?
Again, very much dependent. Within the 46 billion row solution that I mentioned, we use dedicated pools.
Okay, yeah. So I guess as consultants, it depends, right, on what the client needs.
Yeah, definitely. And as I mentioned, this formed part of that data lakehouse architecture that I discussed previously as well. So for some organizations, they might just be using a warehouse. They might not have a need or see a need for having a data lake or even a data lakehouse. Again, it's very much about choosing and proposing the right solution for the challenges of the organization, as opposed to a one size fits all.
Right. Yeah, and earlier in our conversation, you were mentioning that there are some industries that are sort of ahead of the curve, some are behind the curve in terms of adopting some of these solutions. Do you have top of mind, like maybe a couple of industries that you think are ahead and some that are a bit lagging?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think, I'm not too sure if it's industry specific, but maybe it's region specific or generally down to company size. But what we tend to see is always the case is the pharmaceutical industry. It tends to be quite advanced, especially on some of the topics like AI and ML. And I'm sure we're going to see some quite profound leaps in technology in the next few years across that industry specifically. Similarly to, albeit a very something that's probably on the top of a lot of people's minds at the moment, but military and defense as well seem to be quite far advanced as well in terms of utilizing the general tech. Outside of that, I can speak on this from a UK perspective. We tend to find that generally governments tend to lag behind, and some financial institutions as well. I say some; it's not across the board at all. But what we tend to find with some banking organisations is that it takes quite a lot to change underlying architecture and technologies, because there's so much risk and mitigation to take into account.
Yeah, I think the finance industry is probably one of the most motivated, right? Because there's just so much money to be made. But you're right, sometimes making changes and actually implementing solutions can probably take a while, because you have to go through all these levels and hoops.
Yeah, especially. I think that what we see, a lot of startups nowadays as well are able to just jump to newer technologies because they have less baked in terms of years and years worth of data, legacy servers, legacy applications, etc. When you start to involve these type of hurdles, it just becomes a bit more interesting.
Yes. All right, let's fast forward a little bit into the future. We are 10, 12 years from now. And for me, I think that's far future, right? We're not thinking 50 years, we're thinking 10 to 12 years. What are your thoughts on how AI and machine learning is going to impact data analytics?
So my thoughts are it already has. So I think that at least for a lot of organizations, and it's probably good to look at the Microsoft end-to-end stack to start to see how some of these technologies are already playing a part. So now we can start to do transformations based on looking at one column to another column without entering any code. So we have a lot of these AI and ML technologies coming into the UI now, which wasn't the case years and years ago, which is opening it up for what we call more of this citizen developer. Now, in the future, what do I see this looking like? Hopefully, it's where we are now, but on steroids, for lack of a better term. I think that data is due to grow by a huge multitude over the next couple of years, and the analysis of that data is going to decline, right? Because we only have human analysts at the moment that are able to digest, understand, and then reinterpret and find the analysis or the fruit within that data. I think the stat, again, happy to be corrected on this, so please do jump in the comments and correct me. But by 2025, I believe only 30% of the data in existence will be able to be analyzed at that point. So that leaves open a huge 70% worth of data that nobody's even taking a look at, let alone trying to find any insight from it. This is where I believe AI and ML technologies, well, ML being a branch of AI anyway, but will play a huge part by being able to interpret, analyze that data at scale and at speed as compute costs and storage costs continue to decline. And organizations like ourselves at Pomerol can help set the foundations, set the solutions in place for you to be able to utilize that 70% of your data, which otherwise you're going to miss out on.
I think we're going to have to check back in with you in 2025 and see fact or not, we're going to confirm this. But I very much agree with your predictions. I think we are probably already in the place where we have just too much data. We don't know what's good, what's bad. We collect maybe too much because we can. We start collecting it just because we can. I think it's important for organizations to start thinking about, are we actually going to use this or not? And then all these other rules that are coming up, like GDPR and the California rules, where you're having to just be more careful about the data that you're holding, that you're not holding, how do you dispose of it? It's become such a massive thing, and it's only growing. So it's exciting to see how AI and machine learning can help this industry.
Definitely, but just to touch on that point as well, okay, I hope you don't mind. But you mentioned regulations there, and something that I would like to touch on, even if very briefly, is the fact that I think that AI and ML will become very much more regulated than they are already, and I would call for that to happen as well. So I do see that on the horizon, because there are certain obstacles and certain unknowns at the moment in terms of data sets, especially when you're using third-party data and building out machine learning solutions on that data. It can become quite difficult to navigate on if that data is actually yours and whether that ML solution is actually yours as well. So again, investing in somebody who has that knowledge in an organization like ourselves just helps you navigate those different nuances there.
Yeah, I'd love to move away from people saying, "Oh, this is all a black box. I can't really explain what's happening in there." Like, okay, like why are we trusting the solution if you can't even understand how it's coming up with a solution? So that's going to be exciting to keep an eye on. I heard from a friend that Pomerol is hosting these analytics in a day sessions, and you're attending, I guess, all of them, right? Or you're speaking at. So I'd love to just learn more. What is this analytics in a day? Where are you hosting these, and where can people go to learn more?
Oh, definitely. So you definitely heard correctly. They're going to be amazing. So we've spoken on some end-to-end Microsoft Analytics solutions, and we've also spoken around the 46 billion row solution as well. Now we're going to be demonstrating this as part of Analytics in a Day, due to take place towards the end of this month. It's going to be in Kansas City, Chicago, and Miami. Myself and another partner at Pomerol as well, Tim Watson, will be delivering Analytics in a Day. So this is getting you up to speed with no knowledge to how you can build your own Azure Synapse Power BI solution, so end-to-end Microsoft Analytics solution on your own data as well. So it's only going to be happening live for 3 days in 3 different cities. We will be there in person. Times have changed. So please do make sure you come and join us. And I'm sure, Kate, we can send across the link to go into the chat as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'll add that into the comments. Or if Colette, if you're still here, if you want to just add that in so people can get it now. That's just awesome. So do people bring their laptops to this, or is it kind of a listen and take notes type of environment?
No, so this is a hands-on session. Most importantly, it's free and there's lunch included as well. Plus, you get to hear directly from experts like myself and Tim on how you can build these solutions yourself on your data and the pitfalls to avoid. And obviously, we'll be giving out some handy tips and tricks throughout this as well on how you can become experts as well through this process. Like I say, it is hands-on. We do walk you through how to use these tools. So you can generally come from being somebody who uses Excel to being very well versed on cloud-based Microsoft technologies by the end of the day.
I think that's really important. And Colette, thank you so much. She shared the link, so you can go ahead and yes, Scott says lunch. Yeah, who doesn't want a free lunch plus education? I think it's really great what you're doing for the community. I think it's very empowering to come out there and show people that you can move from using the basic tool to using the tool that fits the need that you have in your organization. My only, I guess, moment of being upset was learning that you're not doing this in New York or New Jersey or even Pennsylvania or Connecticut, somewhere closer to me. So you said Chicago, Kansas City, and Miami, right?
That's correct. And just what we mentioned is we're not doing those venues just yet, Kate. So that doesn't mean that we won't be coming to you at some point. It just means not within these 3 dates. So please do feel free to mention in the comments. I know we've got a very interactive group with us today where you would like to experience a hands-on lab with our experts as well.
Yes. Where do we need analytics in a day next, right? From Pomerol. I love it. There's a question on this from Joel. He's asking, is there any remote participation, like dial-in, streaming, anything like that?
Not at this moment in time. This is going to be an in-person event only. But Joel, please do feel free to go over and to follow us, Pomerol Partners on LinkedIn, because I'm sure that in the future we will have some announcements on some other types of events that we'll be putting together.
Yes, maybe DATAcated should host Pomerol's, analytics in a day or something.
I think so.
David's asking if you're bringing this to the UK in the future.
Again, very good question. Not something I can answer at the moment, but I would say potentially, especially being as myself and Tim, the other expert partner at Pomerol, delivering this, we're both based in the UK.
Yes, so it's only right that eventually, right?
Indeed. Where would you like to see us, David? Where would you like it to be held?
Yeah, let us know in the comments, and then I'm sure Pomerol team will look through the comments later on and take that into consideration. In terms of other resources that you can refer the audience to, are there newsletters, articles, videos, YouTube channels that folks can check out to learn more about the topic that we were talking about today?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, Pomerol Partners hosts every month the Data DNA Visualization Challenge. So this is whereby we give a free data set out to the community that you can take away and visualize on your tool. We're very proud to say that we've had Kate as our guest judge previously, and our current guest judge is currently Kristen Kerr as well. So please do join us in that. We also, Pomerol also sponsors the Microsoft Power BI UK user group, which is a community that comes together for all things Power BI. So if you have any questions, and we have lots of learning resources available to our community, and it's not just for UK only members, although the name suggests that we do have a worldwide community there. Pomerol, our website, pomerolpartners.com. You can always come and join us there and find out more about what we're up to. Kate has the DATAcated newsletter, whereby she's been very kind and highlighting some of the fantastic initiatives that we've been doing over at Pomerol. And we also have the Pomerol periodical and my own newsletter as well, whereby you can keep up to date on all things data and Pomerol as well.
I love it. Thank you, Leon. Just one quick question on the Data DNA DataViz challenge. Is that with Power BI only, or is that all DataViz tools?
It's open to all DataViz tools. It's a very low barrier to entry to participate as well. It's usually a single table data set whereby you can still get a lot of insight from the underlying data. You can use Python, R, Click, Vizlib, Excel. We have a lot of entries that visualize the data in Excel that are amazing as well, by the way. Power BI, and the list goes on and on and on.
And what's I know you guys have prizes, right? What are the prizes this month?
Yes, so very well remembered, Kate. And I should have mentioned that we have the winner can win $300 US worth of Amazon vouchers. We also are sponsored by Pact, and Pact also give away 2 data ebooks as well to the winner and 4 runners up. And we should also mention our sponsors Novi Pro and Strato Analytics as well. But the big main prize is the $300 Amazon voucher.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And last question I like to ask all of my guests is, where can people go to actually ask you any follow-up questions if they wanted to continue this conversation?
Oh, excellent. Well, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. So just search Leon Gordon on there, or click on my name throughout this feed. Also, as I mentioned previously, Pomerol Partners, you can find me on the website. And I do regularly write for the Forbes at the Forbes Tech Council, and also Brainz Magazine as well. So you can find me on any of those, in any of those places.
Great. Well, Leon, thank you so much for joining me here on the DATAcated show. It's been a pleasure to host you. Thank you for sharing all your insights and taking all of these questions and comments from the audience. Thank you again to the audience for being super engaged. I truly love live streaming. I absolutely missed it. And I think it's mostly, we have great guests on the show, but we also have amazing folks in the audience that make it super engaging and interactive. So thank you so much for joining us, and stay DATAcated, everybody. Thanks, Leon.
Thanks, Kate.